Good morning, guys. It's a lovely fine morning here in Blighty, and it's quite warm considering the time of year. It's a bit damp outside, but the sun's shining, and I've just dropped my boy at school, and it's a beautiful day, and I hope it's a beautiful day where you guys are. But to the point, what do I want to talk about today? Well, what I want to talk about is fans and fanboys and fuckwits, but we'll get to that. Right, so to start with, I'll give you a little bit of history about myself. I started gaming more years ago than I care to tell you. Long time ago. And I played about with consoles and various different ways of playing games in the early days when it was fairly, a fledgling thing. It hadn't really developed back then very much. But I really sat up and took notice when Doom came along. And my first reaction to Doom was, Jesus, this is so realistic. This is such a great game. How did they manage to produce this? At the time, I was staying at a friend's house and he was going away on his honeymoon, as it happened, and I was house sitting for him. And I spent an awful lot of time playing Doom. I should have been writing an essay for the university course I was on at the time, but as it happened, Doom was far more interesting and far more exciting, especially when you take into account that my mate had changed some of the sound files to sound like another friend of ours who was a brummie, and so the monsters were going around going, all right, all right. And I really do apologise to you brummies out there for ruining your accent. My mate's probably going to listen to this and come and slap me. So, as I say, I apologise for that one. But it gave me the gaming bug, and I was hooked. And at that point, I was hooked on PC gaming. And this brings me to my point. I thought that PCs were the only way to play games properly. I thought that consoles were basically for kids. Despite the fact that actually I would go round to friends' houses and we would play golf or Sensi soccer or something like that and have a blast. And, we'd all get merrily pissed and sit around taking the piss out of each other, and I'd make a complete arse out of myself playing the golf because I was utterly rubbish at it, and Sensi for that matter as well. But it was fun. And despite all that, it didn't occur to me that actually console gaming was worth doing. That console gaming was a thing, and that they weren't just silly kids playing with their, silly little Mario games or whatever, which is kind of what I thought at the time. I was wrong, but I was a fanboy. I was so invested in my system, the system that I'd spent quite a bit of money on, that I couldn't countenance the idea that there were other systems out there that were just as good in their own way, and in some ways better. Because the social aspect of gaming on consoles was a big thing back then. And you'd sit around, as I said, you'd sit around with your friends and you'd have a terrific time. But no, I was thinking that sitting around in my room on my own, twiddling with my keyboard settings, and no, that's not a euphemism, was a more valid experience. But as I say, I was wrong. And this is the problem with fanboys. They become so invested in their own system that they can't acknowledge that other systems are just as good and sometimes even better. You find this today with the Sony fanboys and the Xbox fanboys. The Sony fanboys call the Xbox fans Xbots, and the Xbox fanboys call the PlayStation fans ponies. And the rest of us who are somewhere in the middle are flip-floppers, and everybody's not getting on, and it makes no sense at all. These guys have lost their critical faculty, just like I had back in the past. What changed things for me a little bit was when Halo came along. And for me, I'd always looked at first-person shooters because that was the sort of game that I was into. And first-person shooters on console were, quite frankly, back then, a dog's breakfast. Have you ever tried playing GoldenEye? It's not fun. Great game, but the control mechanism is a nightmare. And then Halo came along. And a mate of mine sat me down in front of Halo and I started playing Halo. And at first I couldn't get on with it. And then after about half an hour or so, I was getting on. And once I learned to circle strafe, on the Xbox, on the original Xbox with Halo, my eyes kind of opened a bit. And I thought, hey, this is actually possible. You can play first-person shooters on console. And of course, it's exploded from there. And first-person shooters on console now are massive. especially with the online side of things. But it did change my mind. And slowly, over a period of about 5 years, I shifted from being a part of the PC master race to being an Xbot. And I was playing on the Xbox, and I didn't even consider the PlayStation, because even though I'd opened my eyes to consoles, the Xbox was where you played first-person shooters. So then I was still a fanboy, and I wasn't interested in the PlayStation because Halo was on the Xbox, and that was a thing for me. That was a big deal for me. Never mind the fact that there were great experiences to be had on the PlayStation as well, I was still a fanboy. So I was still going through the process of realising that these are all valid experiences, and as long as the manufacturers aren't ripping us off and producing games that are subpar, and that happens more times than I'd care to count, but as long as we're getting decent games and the consoles are doing their job and producing good graphics, good sound, and so on and so forth with good control mechanisms, and let's face it, they've all got good control mechanisms now, then why are we so invested in a piece of plastic? And that's kind of where I've come to now. I've got to the point now where I look at these people who are having these arguments about, whether the Xbox better, whether the PlayStation's better, whether the Wii's better. Yeah, there are some people who say that. But I listen to these arguments and I come to the conclusion that it doesn't really matter, does it? If you're enjoying your console, or you're enjoying your PC, or like me, you enjoy your PlayStation, your Xbox, your Wii, your PC, your Nvidia Shield, or even handheld if you're into that sort of thing, or if you're into playing on tablet, if you're what's generally referred to as a casual gamer. It doesn't really matter, does it? Does it really? I'm not sure that it does. And I think these people out there who attack people because they're on a different system or they like a different type of game have gone even beyond fanboy. They've reached the level of, excuse me for saying this, but they've reached the level of fuckwit. You've all seen them. Everything produced by Sony's crap. Everything produced by Microsoft and Xbox is crap. Everything produced by Nintendo is crap, or the other way around. It's all perfect. As I say, they've lost their critical faculty to a point where they've become like religious zealots. They have no logic. They can't work through to a point where they realise that this doesn't really matter, that the console doesn't really matter. These things are not that important. And what I've come to from that as well is that this is actually damaging us as gamers. Because what we should be doing is all pulling together. Because when something like, Batman was released on the PC and it was a complete mess and it wouldn't run for most people, some of the console gamers out there were laughing. They thought it was funny. Why is that funny? Because if it's happening to a PC gamer this time, it's going to happen to an Xbox gamer next time, or a PS4 gamer next time. It doesn't really matter which system is having these problems. The problem is that the developers aren't putting the effort in to make decent games. So all the while we're having these bloody squabbles between ourselves, we're not actually addressing the real issue here. And the real issue is that we should be pulling together as gamers to put pressure on developers and publishers and all the manufacturers out there to produce good products at reasonable prices, not milk us, and there's a hell of a lot of milking going on in the gaming industry now. We are all on the same side, and the good developers are on the same side as well, but they do want to make money, and I have no problem with them making money. But we need to pull together. We need to stop picking holes in each other. Stop kicking each other all the time. There'll be people out there now who are having a right old go at PlayStation VR. It's happening. They're having a right go at PlayStation VR because they're an Xbox fan, which is nonsensical. There'll be some balanced arguments out there, and I've heard some of those as well, and I have got my own issues with PSVR and VR in general, but we're getting off the subject. My point is, we need to stop being fanboys. We need to stop being fuckwits. We need to pull together as gamers and see it as an industry that can benefit us all if everybody's making an effort. Anyway, that's me done. I've gone on rather too long, so I'm going to finish my cup of tea, as I usually do when I've finished doing a video, and I will speak to you guys again soon. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it. Thumbs down if you don't. Boo. Or come into the comments. As always, I'm really happy to hear from you, whether you agree with me, whether you don't agree with me, if you want to come on and call me a flip-flopper or an X-bot or a, I don't know, pony, whatever you want to call me, I don't care. Come on and talk about it. But if you're going to put an argument forward, make sure you back it up with something. Don't just come on and start shouting at people, because then I know what you are. You're one of those fuckwits, okay? So don't be a fuckwit. Don't. Be a reasonable human being. Address these issues in a balanced, level-headed way, and we can have a conversation. And in the meantime, as I say, I'm going to have my cup of tea. And I will speak to you guys again soon. Bye.